let's talk about a few things that I found really shocking when I first moved abroad to this tiny island called Malta. I've been living here for over 10 years now, since 2013. And the first thing that really shocked me was the fact that my blood wasn't good enough. Let me rephrase that a bit, okay? I think that came out a bit negative. So I found out that I couldn't be a blood donor. And that's because I come from a country where malaria is still prevalent. How do you say that word? Anyway, I come from a country where malaria is still ongoing, and so my blood cannot be donated here in Europe because I could possibly kill somebody else. That was astounding to me because I just thought, blood was blood and I could just go anywhere and donate blood. We see that everywhere. But I was quite, it was interesting to discover this information. I was disappointed, of course, but then I went online and I tried to find out more. And it does make sense because malaria has been eradicated in the Western world for so long, for so many years, and I would be putting other people at risk. So that makes sense. But then I went on to find out that I couldn't be a good organ donor as well. I can donate my organs, but for white people or Caucasian people, the rate of organ failure from a different race is about 14%. So I'm not a good donor here either. But I can donate to people of other races. I can donate to Asians, I can donate to Latin Americans, but I cannot donate to a white person. I can, but like I said, the rate of organ failure is 14%. So that really shocked me. Something else that really surprised me was the work situation in Malta. Now, it's not just Malta, it's the EU rules in general. So I was shocked to find that you don't just get a job based on your merits, based on your qualifications and experience. You have to go through a certain process because of the laws that have been set in place. So it is basically Maltese first, EU citizen second, and everybody else next. And that's not just in Malta, it happens all over the EU. That's what it is. The first country, national first, comes first. Then someone else from the EU comes next. And then every other person, you have to, it's a jungle out there. So it doesn't matter if you're American, South African, Nigerian, Asian, whatever. You have to, you're all in the same jungle. So it's highly competitive in that sense. So first they have to find someone who fits the job requirements from Malta. If such a person is not found and they have to show proof that such a person is not found, then it becomes open to anyone else who is an EU citizen. If that also fails, then it becomes open to everybody else. At the time, Malta wasn't what it is today. So the competition was quite high. There weren't enough jobs to go around for everyone. So my field, I couldn't find a job in my field, but I was lucky enough to open the newspaper one day. Yes, there were still newspapers back in 2013. I was lucky enough to open the newspaper one day and find an ad for teaching English. And I was like, I think I can do that. I did the courses necessary and I got the job just like that. And there are still quite a lot of openings in that industry now. We know what happened in 2020 that hit the industry hard, but it's picking up back again. And I've never looked back since. I've done more to improve myself professionally. So I've been growing in that industry and I don't regret going into that industry. Really, I love it. I love the freedom that it allows me, the versatility, the flexibility that it allows me to live the life that I actually want to live. Another thing that I found really astounding, it was a huge cultural shock for me, was the diverse culture. Like, it's worlds apart from where I'm used to. So if you don't know anything about me, my name is Isabella. I'm originally from Nigeria and I moved here directly from Nigeria. A little naive, well, more than a little naive, because there were quite a lot of things I didn't know about Malta. But let me give you a little backstory. Sometimes I feel like the world is connected. I feel like the universe, arranges things in a certain way. So I see the world as a kind of tree, and or should I say, I see life as a tree. And each branch will lead you to a certain place. So you can take any branch. That's free will. Free will is you can take any branch, any path in life, and the leaves are the things that the universe puts in front of you. So if you want to call it the universe or God, as you wish. And I first came across the country called Malta when I was about like 8 years old, and it was the World Cup period. I think it was 1990 something. And there was a World Cup coming up. And my family were really, really excited because Nigeria was going to be playing football. We were sitting and watching the opening ceremony, right? And before N, because it's in alphabetical orders, the countries, they come out in alphabetical order, and before N comes M, right? So we were just excited and waiting, and then there was the announcement, Malta. And I was like, my tiny little brain back then, I was like, what, Malta? And that's because if you are Nigerian and you're watching this, you know why. There is a drink in Nigeria called Malta. It's a non-alcoholic malt drink, and it's produced, it was at the time only produced by the Guinness company. So I was wondering, like, what? Guinness has their own country or something? Anyway, I was also quite surprised because there were just like, I think 10 people walking out. So I understood, obviously, that it was a very small country. And I think I heard some of my relatives saying how it was an island or something, but I just didn't give it any other thought. And that was the last thing I knew about Malta until 2013, when I had to move here for work. So I did a little bit of research. I was so excited to come here. And then the culture shock was like, woof. I wasn't prepared enough. So what really got to me, a number of things, more than a few things. Okay, so the first one was the nightlife. The nightlife in Malta is wild. It is wild. So there's this particular area in Malta called Pacheville, and it's where all the clubs, the nightclubs and the bars, where they're all concentrated, like, on one street, basically. And the first time I went there, I was reeling. And this was mainly because I come from a sort of sheltered background. Religious/sheltered, not heavily religious, to be honest, but sheltered in the sense that not like my parents didn't let me go out or anything, but I was more or less on my own because my brother is 5 years older than I am. So I was just kind of like an only child, so to speak. And it was just school, home, sometimes meeting with friends on the street, but it was just school and home. I didn't grow up knowing about clubbing. By the time I was in my teenage years, I knew about clubbing from movies, but it wasn't something I was really interested in doing. I started discovering clubbing when I went to university, but I wasn't really doing much of that. And it was just, you would find one club in the middle of nowhere, nothing else around. So that culture of having a whole area where you could go out and have fun, that was something completely alien to me. So that was the first culture shock, like, what? This is wild, this is fun. And I had a lot of fun. Okay, I had a lot of fun. The second culture shock that I had was when summer came by and the clothes started coming off, literally. I kid you not. Like, I mean, if you live near the sea, you know what happens in summertime. You don't even have to live near the sea. If you live in a country where there are 4 seasons and, the winters are very long, you know that when summer comes, the clothes come off. And that was another culture shock for me because in Nigeria, with my background, again, there's this thing of modesty, you have to cover up. And even when people do go to the beach, I don't know if you've seen any videos or photos of Nigerians at the beach, they are fully dressed, even going into the water fully dressed. So that was a culture shock for me as well. It took me, I would say, like 5 to 6 years to start getting comfortable in a bikini, to be honest. Even now, I still I would only be in my bikini when I have to go into the water. Once I come out of the water, I'm like just wrapping myself in a sarong or in a towel. I just don't feel comfortable. It's not only the cultural background anymore, though, it's also me. I know. But it took me a while to get over that shock. Another culture shock that I experienced was how young the people were that were going out to clubs, like very young kids, 14, 15, 16. They were going to clubs and smoking, drinking, having boyfriends and girlfriends. This is not something that we did back at home. And if you did those things, you had to hide. Okay, I don't know if you've heard about African parents, but man, African parents are strict. So you would have to hide if you were smoking, or if you had a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you'd have to hide all of those. So that was a culture shock for me. It opened my eyes to, a different world. The next thing that stunned me when I moved here was I thought I was unique. I thought I would be unique. I would be the only Nigerian, or maybe 1 out of 10 Nigerian on this tiny island. Again, like I said, it's a very tiny island right now it's a population of maybe 500,000, but at the time I moved here, the population was around, let's say, 250, 300,000 people. And I thought I would be the only Nigerian here. Big shock. Nigerians, we are everywhere. We are everywhere. I was really surprised to find, a community of Nigerians, even Nigerians who came here to study, like in the 50s, in the 60s. They remained here, had kids. I was very surprised. The football league here in Malta is full of Nigerians. Some of the best players are Nigerians. That was surprising, and that number is growing day by day. Which brings me to my next shocking point, and that is, it opened my eyes to the refugee crisis. What we see back at home is just a fraction. How the media kind of controls your ideas and your opinions and your conceptions of other places. It doesn't just happen in the Western world where they show you a certain side of Africa. It also happens back at home. We see a different side of Europe and United States, and also a different narrative of the refugee situation. Mostly we would only hear about Nigerians, crossing the desert and going abroad and dying while crossing, but usually it would be in the desert. But here I found how people were crossing the Mediterranean for different reasons. There's the wars and economic reasons. People who move from Nigeria are usually moving for economic reasons. And they would cross the Mediterranean, risking everything, risking their lives. Sometimes families would cross together. And a lot of them were losing their lives during this crossing, because they would put them on these rubber boats, that were not secure, overloaded rubber boats. And you would have journeys almost every day. At the time, now it's fewer, there are fewer journeys now, but at the time in 2013, 14, I think all the way to 2017, it was almost every day. And there were always deaths. It was astounding for me. I understand why people would take such a journey, risk it all, but the reality of it is something it's something that humbles you. You think that your problems are unique and that nobody else can go through what you're going through, and you are suffering and all of that. And then you find people who actually are really going through tough times, desperate times, and they make desperate decisions. So that was really shocking for me. Also, the conditions of the refugees at the time here in Malta, it's a bit different now. What I like about the refugee situation in Malta, this is not to say that it is good or it's perfect, but when I relate it to other European countries, I would say there is a better system here in Malta. because I can see people actually making a difference in their lives. I can see people working in different industries that had gone through that journey. But back then, it was almost impossible because they were still trying to sort the situation out. That was really eye-opening for me. And it's still going on. Unfortunately, it's still going on. Another thing that astounded me was the quality of the food. It was shocking to go to the supermarket and see these beautiful looking fruits and vegetables, much more beautiful and bigger than what I would find back at home, only to take a bite of it and find the taste so bland. It's like a fraction of what it tastes like back at home. I was so disappointed. First time I tried a tomato, a juicy tomatoes, and I was like, this tastes like water. I don't buy certain things anymore. I don't buy pineapples. They taste horrible here. For people who don't know what pineapples really taste like when you come from a tropical region, that's fine. But for me, I know the difference, so I don't buy pineapples. I don't buy papaya or pawpaw, as we call it back at home. I don't buy avocados. Oh my God, the avocados back at home, mangoes. Oh, I miss the food back in Nigeria, seriously. I miss it. But of course, over the years, I have gotten used to the taste, but it was really shocking to find that it didn't taste the same. Even though back at home, the fruits and vegetables don't look so pretty, they don't look so beautiful, they taste way, way better. Now, another thing that amazed me was the language. I didn't expect that I would hear a language that was a mix of so many different languages all rolled up into one to create this unique sound. It's a mix of Arabic, some English words, some French, and Italian, mostly Sicilian words. But it's so rich, and they have their own characters, letters, which are kind of like from the Greek era, I think. Please, if you're Maltese and you're watching this, please forgive me. I know a few words and new phrases. A few phrases like Inochbach, which means I love you. Bonjour means hello or good morning. Also, I can say Kifinti, how are you? Mushhazin, that's not bad. So I'm sure if you hear that, you can hear some Arabic and some English already in there. And thank you is grazie hafna. So that's a mix of Italian and Arabic. Grazie, Italian, grazie. Hafna is kind of Arabic. So that was, quite amazing. The next thing that surprised me was the level of affluence in this country. The local people, Maltese people, have money. Not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them took advantage of the boom since they joined the EU, and they took advantage of that and, started businesses and became quite affluent. So there's a lot of money running through here. You can't believe the amount of luxurious cars you can find, just, rolling down the road or rolling down the streets, even if there are no highways, super highways for them to go racing, they just go vroom. So you've got all kinds of luxurious cars. I'm not gonna name them, but you know what luxurious cars are. So imagine, I think Malta is kind of like the Dubai of the Mediterranean at the moment. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you know anything about Malta, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the feeling that I get about Malta. Not completely, because it's not a new country. So you have a lot of history and architecture, from prehistoric age to middle age. So that's really good, actually. But it does have that vibe, that fast lane vibe. But the pace of life is quite slow. So that brings me to my next point, which is Malta at that time used to close down between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. for lunch. So most places, most shops would be closed for lunch. That was something completely new for me. It doesn't happen back at home in Nigeria. People might, one or two shops might just close because they had to go somewhere and get something, but they would eat at work. Okay. Work doesn't stop. It's At least I lived in Lagos, so it was almost 24 hours, kind of like New York, fast paced. And here it was, slower, which I enjoyed, I enjoyed. But that 3 hour break was shocking for me. I had to plan around it. The next thing I'm going to talk about, I found really interesting was the fact, I mean, I think I was so naive when I came there. I was already in my 30s, but I was still so naive. So I found out that Malta was actually, the whole of Malta was a movie set. So many great movies have been shot here, including Gladiators. I think the new Jurassic Park. There were some scenes that were shot here. The Count of Monte Cristo was shot here as well. So it's so vibrant. And Game of Thrones, the first season of Game of Thrones was shot in so many different locations here in Malta. So that was really, really cool for me. It was something I found like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And something amazing happened I can't remember the year, it was just before Brad Pitt and Angelina broke up. They came here to shoot their last movie together. They shot it on the island of Gozo, actually, but they did come to Malta and we had some sightings. That was so, 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 so thrilling to see. Those are the things that I really found shocking when I first moved here. And there are other things that have been amazing me along the years, but I've slowly gotten used to my life here in Malta, and there are things that I like and things I don't like. I made a video about that. I made two videos actually, one about the things that I like about living in Malta and one about things that I don't like about living in Malta. If there is anything that you know about Malta, or that you maybe when you visited you found surprising or shocking, please let me know in the comments. And I have some more videos about Malta coming up, so if you like to know more, please subscribe and follow the channel for more. So until the next video, ciao ciao.